In this episode of Student-Led Conversations, the mic is in the hands of a Gen Z voice on the verge of leaving their time as a student behind, as they consult an industry thought leader to discuss how networking can play a crucial role in finding your footing early in that journey and set yourself on a path to success. From attending conferences and events to following and connecting with industry thought leaders and influencers on social media, this episode will explore the benefits, advantages, and keys to networking for students and young professionals.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another wonderful episode of Student-Led Conversations. I am joined today by a great friend of mine and also just, one of the rocket ships taking off in the accounting profession right now, Dom Piscopo. Dom, we just got back from partying at BTG, Bridging the Gap conference. What's up,
sir.
man?
Still kind of on the recovery train from that. I went straight from Bridging the Gap to my bachelor party to another friend's wedding. So, I'm happy you're catching me later in the week, not earlier in the week, so I can have my energy levels back. But it's great to see you again, man.
Yeah, always great to chat. So, we got a lot to dig into here. The focus of this episode is networking and how students and young professionals, in business or in accounting, wherever they decide to go, can leverage networking to have the best career they want to have. And I believe that it's one of the biggest pieces of building a successful career. Too many students think they can just graduate with a 4.0 and they're just going to get whatever job they want, but I think we're going to dig in and find it's a little bit different than that during this episode. So Dom, first of all, how'd you even get into accounting?
Yeah, I was kind of a oddball student. Already like in high school where it was like if I cared, I could do really, really well in classes, but it was very hard for me to, find stuff that I was interested in. I was always being pushed kind of up the science route. A lot of my family had gone that way. My sister's a doctor, so, guess who's the favorite child? Um, and, I was just not like that. And so I just knew I didn't want to do the sciences anymore. And I kind of tried some stuff here and there. I took an accounting class, which they didn't even have at my high school, so I had to do it online. And as part of that, in high school too, like I was doing comic improv at like actually a pretty high level. And we were like one of the best comic improv teams in Eastern Canada. And so I got kind of picked out for a case competition in grade 12. So it was called Place à la Jeunesse. You could win some actually pretty hefty scholarships to, go to business school. We didn't actually win it. But to me, that was like one of the first times that I had done a project that I was like, oh, this is really cool. So the way these case competitions work are like you get put into an isolation room, you're given a case, you have a couple hours, and you have to go pitch it in front of people. And it was really kind of in my wheelhouse, and I actually like had a lot of fun doing it. And that to me kind of solidified, I think I should go that route somewhere where I can kind of lean into these strengths and not just study a bunch of material I'm really not interested in to hopefully one day make some money. And so I took that path, and honestly, accounting was literally just because it was really easy to switch out of accounting into other streams, but not vice versa. Like if you had started off in marketing and in second year you decided you wanted to switch, you were in trouble. You had to like catch up on some courses from first year. But if you started in accounting and you wanted to switch to some other area, you were very much free to do so. And so I picked accounting, and then I just kind of stayed into it because I found some things that I was really interested in. And for me, that was tax, kind of management accounting, and the kind of finance edge of things. So, Inter one, like I hated it. Intermediate accounting was like back to the stuff I really didn't like. It was the in the weeds memorization, all of that. It is important, by the way, for foundational knowledge for students, but then I kind of found some of the stuff that I really, really liked, and tax planning to me was like so interesting. And so I kind of continued down the path of following the case competition route too, which to me as a student was really, really game changing. That kind of took me from, yeah, I was like a good student, not like definitely not top of the class, but we ended up winning. I think we were the first team ever in the history of the university I go to win the tax case competition. And then that kind of helped kind of elevate a little bit your profile to employers and whatnot. And that caught a lot of attention of folks, which definitely set you on the right path, right? And it makes networking a lot easier once you've kind of done one of those things.
I love the experience you got like outside of the classroom, right? Because I feel like we focus too much on what's happening in the classroom, right? What's your
Yeah.
GPA? How did you feel about this class? Yada, yada, yada. But it's that stuff you do outside of the classroom that like really not only sets you apart, but gets you connected with the right people. So
Yeah.
like not to toot my own horn, but I love networking, right? It's a big
Yeah.
part of like who I believe I am and where I find satisfaction in the profession. And it all started with just, posting on LinkedIn and then got to know people that got me to conferences and then, I made all these friends. But then on top of that, I understand what these people are talking about because I've been doing an internship for over a year and a half now while I've been in school. So
Yeah.
I just, I want to stop here and like give a little lesson to the students of regardless of what degree you're getting, get out there and get experience, whether it's with a club, whether it's with case studies like you did, whether it's an internship or, whether it's volunteering for, I think in the US it's called VITA, like you're volunteering to help lower income people file their taxes.
Yeah.
Just get active and you're going to get to know people that, are going to push you down a path that's way more exciting than you would have just found, staying in the classroom.
Yeah. And that translates super well. I kind of joked about this of like the classroom stuff, but like, I had of my cohort of people who kind of got jobs at Deloitte when I was working there, um, pretty much everyone graduated summa cum laude, which is like the highest honors. And I had graduated magna cum laude. And I was like, honestly, like I was working in nightlife the whole time. To me, like you guys wasted a whole lot of time because we ended up in the same place, right? And I kind of like, I graduated with like some money in the bank from the work I was doing on the side. And I had really worked on kind of social skills from working in nightlife and things like that. And obviously, like studying is important, right? Like I had to do some of the catch up work on the CPA exam later, where I was like, I don't think I had learned business consolidations properly, and so that was like a really scary time going into the CPA exams. Um, but yeah, it's not all about just that, right? And like when I was on the other side of the table, I helped a lot with recruitment when I was at Deloitte. And like one of the big ways that it works is literally like they just throw everyone in a room and then afterwards you kind of debrief. And if two or more people say, "Hey, I liked that person," like, "Oh, that person Kim, she really stood out to me," then her profile would be brought forward. And then it was like a checkbox, yes or no, based off of their academic performance. So it was really just like you just had to be over a certain hurdle. But other than that, there were some top students who didn't get picked just because nobody brought up their name. And so it is important to get experience on that front. Absolutely. And that is a flawed recruitment system, by the way. I'm not saying that's
Yeah.
how it should be, but I'm just saying that is kind of how it worked out.
But it's almost like the field test, right? Like when you start talking to somebody, you get a like a real quick really fast like whether you're going to get along with someone or not, right? And
Yeah,
whether we want to agree or not that that's a really important part of the workplace, it is a part of what happens every day. And
for
so
sure.
being likable and I'm not saying go out and lie to be likable, but just the more you chat it up, the more you small talk, the easier networking is.
Yeah.
So I was just at the Cal CPA membership summit in LA last week and I knew like two people, right? And I was like, okay, like, I'm this student. I don't really want to talk to anybody who's not a student, but it's funny that when you just kind of put yourself in situations and kind of get into the conversation, how it just becomes so easy and you meet people that you end up becoming friends with. So, um, get out to the meet the firms events, the networking
Oh
events.
yeah.
If the bit, even if your goal isn't to go to a bigger company or a bigger firm, if they invite you to like go for lunch to the offices or something one day, like take a chance on those opportunities and just go.
Yeah. And you end up with optionality later. So I had a friend in university who like she was pretty decided like I'm going to this sort of mid-sized regional firm. Like she knew people who worked there. She knew a lot about the accounting culture and what she wanted to avoid. And she had offers from all of them and from all of the big four and ended up going there anyways. But then for the next 2 or 3 years, like she was the one that got away for all the partners. So like she was still getting offers and things to like switch over firms, right? And so just by having gone to those events and making a good impression, she kept herself optionality in case she decided, you know what, maybe I do want to go the kind of bigger corporate route.
Yeah. So speaking of that, you went to Deloitte,
Yep.
arguably the biggest and baddest of the big four, right? Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
Dom.
Yeah.
So what was that like? You made the decision to go to Deloitte. You're a brand new associate there. How did you set yourself apart and what were those first couple years like?
Yeah, I mean, so right off the bat, I don't think I had the absolute standard experience for someone starting there. Because of the case competitions I had done, my coach from that was also my coach at work, who is now a National Tax Office partner, also named Dom, interestingly. Um, and this guy was brilliant. Like this guy like is not a normal human being. Like in the way that he can process information, like now he's the guy who comes up with the tax plans like at the national level. Like he is an absolute brain. And so he is also a very good mentor and coach. And so he really like kind of took me under his wing. And so I ended up working on a lot of very interesting projects pretty early on. Which did lead to some tricky dynamics where it was like, hey, Dom, like you're maybe not pulling your weight for T1s, which is like, regular tax file, like federal tax filings, but for Canada. But I was like, hey, like I'm working on this reverse takeover to take a cannabis company public. Like I don't know what you want me to say. Um, and I was able to kind of really find my areas of interest. And I ended up on this like almost like pod type team that would work a lot of the transactions, which was really cool. It was very, very, very fun. But right off the bat, there were a couple problems for me kind of at the corporate level where I think I maybe would have flourished more in a smaller or mid-sized firm. So I got to learn a lot. My technical got way better. They made the CPA exam a lot easier because they provide a lot of materials, they provide a lot of support and things like that. Um, but yeah, right off the bat, like I was kind of like, I don't like the system of you have to do so many billable hours because I was like, there's some work that I can focus on that has way higher degrees of realization, way higher degrees of like value add, or different things like that, or being more efficient feels like you're being penalized. And I've always had a little bit of that like entrepreneurial spirit of like, let me do what I'm good at and let me lean all the way into it. But there was still a lot of kind of structure there. And like I was generating like actual genuine leads. Like a lot of them didn't end up closing, but like I was involved in business development as like probably after internship, but as like a full-time analyst level person.
Which is crazy at the big four. That's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, like I brought someone in from the bar one day who like had this huge problem. They had a flight school and all these students from China and they didn't know how to deal with it. And then actually after one of the businesses I ended up working at later ended up becoming a client, largely based off a lot of kind of like groundwork I had done to kind of build some bridges there, which was cool too. But and I got a lot of recognition from the managing partner. I also will say like a lot of the complaints about some of these firms are very office dependent. Like I think we had a really good core of people, and so the managing partner that I dealt with, um, he was just like a really good people person, and he saw what I was good at, and he tried to support me, and he tried to kind of change the definition of my role a little bit, but was basically met with resistance by you know Deloitte corporate, where it's like, no, these are like the metrics for that level that have to be focused on. And so that kind of like really discouraged me. And then full circle to Big Four transparency, compensation was another huge issue for me. So I mentioned that I had been working in nightlife where there's a lot of money to be made. And so like it felt like, my paycheck from working 40, 50, 60, I've clocked a 100-hour week before during tax season. My paychecks from doing all that were very similar to my paychecks from working Friday and Saturday or Friday and Sunday at the bar. And so that was really discouraging to me. That was like a very, very big sticking point, which is also part of the reason that I ended up moving on to industry after that.
So, what did you do about your compensation? So, we have all these students that are about to go, you know, try and land an internship, land their first job, what should we be thinking about when it comes to compensation and what was your experience?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely created like more friction than was necessary early on, but it did end up kind of working out. Like I would like be like, this is not acceptable to me, and they're like, well, that's what it is, right? But ultimately, what ended up actually happening with that is, and laid a lot of the groundwork to knowing that Big Four transparency was a real pain point. But I basically asked every single person of my level at every single firm in the city how much they were making. And I found out that we were like the
Just
least.
like cold calling?
No, I mean like I knew them or like a friend of a friend or something. And I was like, hey, like what's everyone making? Like give me like the exact numbers. Um, and yeah, I presented it to the partner, and to his credit, he was actually like, oh, damn. Like we try to be kind of more ahead of the market rather than behind the market. Um, this is interesting. Let me see what I can do. And then my whole cohort ended up getting a raise somewhere close to 10% as a result of that. And I mean, I was still not super pumped about what we were being paid, but I was like, okay, like at least now it's fair, right? Like this is just what the market is. And so we ended up getting a raise as a result of that, where they made like a market adjustment when they realized that we were behind. So yeah, it was, it worked out.
That's a big deal. And
Yeah.
I think the lesson we can all take from that is, speak up. Be aware of what you need to be paid and,
Yeah.
speak up. Be bold, right? Don't I want to be careful because you don't want to go asking for more than you're worth. But
Yes, exactly.
you can kind of, push the envelope there of like, hey, like if I'm really worth this much to you, or, you know, this is the value I feel like I can bring to your firm or to your company. Can we work on this? Then I think, if the big four are willing to do it, then obviously they're
Yeah.
the smaller firms and smaller businesses, like you should be able to have a little bit of weight. So you then created Big Four transparency so that students like me and accounting and consulting professionals across the US and Canada can actually know what they're worth. And
Yeah.
nothing like this existed before. So, like, how did that happen? How did you develop this? You're a startup founder now.
Yeah.
What's that all about?
So just over 4 years ago, at that point, I had left the firm and I was working in industry. Really not a very good job. Like I was kind of doing like felt like three jobs, like not great. And industry is not all bad. My next industry job was fantastic, but that one was really not great, and I was very unhappy there. However, the person that I was working with was like a very famous entrepreneur where I was living, so he was a pretty big name. And, I started kind of looking into it, and, he did provide some kind of mentorship on like what were the early days of your journey like and things like that. And I was kind of like, hey, I want to learn how to build stuff, right? Not being an engineer or anyone super well versed in computers more than the average, like it was, it felt like a tricky thing, but I started getting involved in that community largely through podcasts. So I started listening to Indie Hackers, My First Million. Those were kind of the main two at the time that I was getting into. And I started hearing about these no code platforms. So I built Big Four Transparency on this platform called Softer. And it was really just a weekend project. It was like the first thing that I had built, and I just kind of launched it on Reddit with the idea of like, hey, we're having all these one-off conversations about compensation. Why don't we just like gather this in one place and create a resource that can then be browsed, right? Because it'd be like someone would create a compensation thread and there'd be 50 people would share. And then like 3 weeks later, someone else would create a compensation thread. And like the odds of finding something that's actually helpful to you in there were very low. And so I was like, listen, let's just like throw this together, actually create a resource. So I built a flow that would anonymize entries, organize them into a database for everyone to be able to browse. And it ended up going super, super viral on Reddit. So this was never like actually a real like business plan or anything. Like this was just like a weekend project. Arguably, had it not worked, the next one I had been working on was I had been kind of early to the punch of hearing about people talking about semaglutides and like Ozempic and stuff, and I was trying to build a place for people to share their journeys on that. So that might have actually been a bigger opportunity than this, but like it is what it is, whatever. We don't kick ourselves for that because I built the whole thing and it was like I just never published it because I was like, oh, this like Big Four transparency thing's taking up a lot of my time. Because I was just cleaning the database. I was trying to keep it standardized. I was trying to get the word out. And at the time, I was really like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could get like 1,000 salaries all in the spreadsheet? And a couple of weeks ago, we actually crossed over 20,000. So, mission accomplished and more. And so, yeah,
Wow.
it's this great resource. Go check it out if you're a student. If you are earning a salary, it would be amazing if you were able to anonymously share what that looks like. I would say kind of intern level is where we struggle most in terms of data because people aren't necessarily plugged into like what's going on in the industry yet, so they maybe don't know about this website. So yeah, please take a moment. Like it takes 1 to 2 minutes to go kind of submit an entry there. And then yeah, you can open up this spreadsheet. You can filter it however you want. You can go look at salaries that are going to be relevant to you. And like I said, there's over 20,000 of them at this point. So yeah, and it's completely free to use for users. And then we ended up building out a suite of tools on top of it to take the analysis, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps further to be able to help accounting firms now use that data. So it was really like a full circle where like I kind of identified like a market pay issue when I was at the Big Four firm. And now one, maybe soon to be two, we'll see of the Big Four are actually using what I've built as a resource to help inform their own compensation.
And it's for young professionals and students, it's incredibly valuable because you can go and pick the location.
Yeah.
You can pick the level of like, are you a senior, associate? Are you an intern? And you can literally map out and figure out pretty much exactly what you should be making
Yeah. Yeah.
for the foreseeable future, right? Like, accounting salaries are changing a little bit. They're going up. We'll see what happens with AI, right? Like, does
Yeah.
it does
I
it
think they'll continue
smash
to go
the
up.
the salaries or go up, Um, but now you're actually informed going into the conversation. Like, I think there's like an Indeed or a LinkedIn commercial that I saw a while ago where it's like, so what's your salary range? And then the recruiter's like, well, we pay market value.
Yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
like, well, what's market value? And they're like, well, we're competitive. And
Yeah.
it's like, you don't want to go into the conversation like that. You want to go in, have your numbers ready, know what they're willing to give, and then, it really should be like a very amicable and like win-win situation for both parties. But
Yeah.
too
Yeah.
often it's
Absolutely.
not just because of um, we're kind of shy to talk about this, and then companies obviously, they want to pay their people good, but they also have to make ends meet.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's
this
a
really
dynamic
bridges the
there.
gap for both.
Yeah. And I will say like there's a dynamic there where like early on like you can't necessarily like ask for the moon either, but it is something you should be asking about. Like what will my compensation package be? Like relatively early in the interview. Um Especially like if you do have multiple options and you're having multiple conversations with places because I've had it before where like I've had places reach out with what sounds like a great role and I'm like, what's comp? And they're like, oh, the upper end of the range is this. And I'm like, well, that's 5% less than I'm making. So like, absolutely not. Thanks. And it's just like you're not wasting anyone's time. Or again, like I've had a role I've been interested in and I didn't end up going there, but like the most money I've ever seen on a piece of paper for myself was like as I was leaving my last industry job and I ended up going full time on Big Four transparency instead. But they had approached me and I was like, listen, like what you're offering is great, but it's a pretty big deviation from the path that I'm on. Like I'm not totally sure. And then they like threw an extra like 25K on it. And I was like, wow, like, okay, now it's just a decision of like, am I going out on my own or am I going to go do this? And so sometimes like having those like really earnest conversations, and this doesn't need to be game playing. This doesn't need to be like hostile. It's literally just like, like I want this to work for me. I want this to work for you, but I also don't want anyone to waste their time. And
Yeah.
so I find like being able to get rid of some of that taboo is very helpful. Like it's very practical to be able to be like, listen, here's my expectation. If this is where we are, then let's talk. And if not, like, I'm fine where I'm at as well. So yeah, and the idea is get rid of some of that information asymmetry, but then at the same time, like it's not even an us versus them thing. Like I might have stuck it out longer in accounting had I known what the opportunities looked like down the road. Right? Like I was starting to panic. Like I was like, I'm gonna like never be able to buy a home. Like I'll never be able to do this. But like the reality is like my salary was gonna like double in the next like 3.5 years from when I left. Or honestly, probably less, probably just 3 years from when I left, my salary would have doubled. And had I known that trajectory, I would have maybe been more okay with it. But just the lack of clarity on what that actually looked like in practice, like really, really scared me. And I was kind of like, I don't know if this path ever pays off. And like, spoiler for people who haven't looked at it, but like, there's money in accounting. Like, there very much is money in accounting. And this does very much become a worthwhile career path to follow. And it's not even just at the partner level, like manager and up. I'm like, this is like a pretty worthwhile choice to have made. But there is like an element of paying your dues and like early on comp is not very competitive, right? And it's gotten a lot better, but it's still not great compared to some other options, but it pays off. So, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of like comparing it to consulting or even investment banking, where investment bankers and consultants right out of school, like they like
Yeah, they make
make
way more.
bank.
Yeah.
But the long-term career path in investment banking is like what? Like I don't know anybody who stayed in investment banking like longer than like 7 years before they burnt out.
Oh,
And
most
then you
people
go
lose
work
too.
at like a more of a like a boutique firm, or you go like work at a smaller private equity firm or whatever, and your salary goes down, but there's options to like make more money as you make deals. But um like accounting is always consistent, and like the career path is like just so clear, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's crazy to me the way that there isn't more like talk of yeah, I worked on helping recruit for some roles for manager roles paying $150,000 a year for a remote job. Like,
Yeah.
you're 30, you're 28, you're making 150 grand like potentially in a low cost of living area. Like that's pretty wicked. Like that's great. So there are like super good opportunities out there, but like all I got met with was like it gets better, don't worry. And I'm like, come on, like what does that mean? Like I need numbers to understand that this is worthwhile, right? So, yeah.
It's funny. I wasn't gonna bring up anything about AI because I feel like AI just gets talked about too much, right? But um since going to these conferences, I've been on kind of like an AI spree. Like I'm learning everything I can about it. I'm applying it to everything I'm doing. Like just
Yeah.
it's been very eye-opening. And I won't dig in too much to that, but the thing I want to mention is that when you use AI with data,
Yeah.
it's like it's so good.
Yeah.
And I think the same goes for like making our career decisions, right? Like I'm always very data driven, right? Like if I can put numbers to something,
Yeah.
way better. And so Big Four transparency enables that, right? Like
Yeah.
if your family is going to make a career move to a different city, like, okay, what realistically can I expect from someone of my years of experience, or what can I not expect? And it just allows for much better decision making. that you don't have otherwise. So, I'm incredibly appreciative that you created
Thank
a
you.
system and a product that allows for free students to be able to do this because without it, it's very blind. You go to like Glassdoor or Indeed and it's like there's all these mixed reviews and like some people
Yeah.
got paid nothing and some people got paid everything and you're like, "Well, wait, what does this actually mean?"
Yeah. I think the big problem with accounting too is it gets conflated a lot with like, a bookkeeper salary, or you're looking at tax salaries and it's like people working at like H&R Block get like mixed in there. And so like at the time I was also looking of like, oh, like what does a tax manager make? And like some of these things were terrifying. And I was like, oh my God, like is that like for real what I've signed up for? Like I'm gonna go like do road paving or something and like make way more like now and later, right? Like I was really kind of like freaking out about like I think I've just wasted time with this. But then again, like now that I see the real numbers, I'm like, yeah, this is a super worthwhile trajectory. And like I feel like that's part of the pipeline issue too. Like I've joked about this and I had Mike Manilek like help me out making a visual with this, but I was like, we need more partners on jet skis. Like we need to like show like that this is like a desirable path. And there are some problems on like work-life balance and things like that that need to be addressed, but like financially, very desirable path for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And kind of going into that, I'm notorious for talking about cloud accounting, right? And
Yeah.
a lot of the guests on your podcast are also kind of involved in that side of the industry. But I think it's been eye-opening to me over the last couple months of like realizing the reason private equity is jumping so much into accounting is because there's not partners to fill the gaps that are being left.
Yeah. I
And
think there's two things, but let's stay on that stream for right now. Yeah.
yeah, so I was just gonna say, regardless of if you decide to go work for a fully remote firm that's embracing technology and kind of at the bleeding edge of like where accounting's going, or if you go decide to work at like a larger regional firm or even like a larger local firm, like there's gonna be opportunities for partnership wherever you go. It does whichever direction you decide to go. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing is like there's so many options. It's not just tax or audit.
No.
It's
Yeah.
it's advisory, it's tax planning, it's R&D credits. It's there's all these different avenues that are opening up and we got to get the word out. And that's why I would say, that's what networking has done for me, right? Is I realized like, oh shoot, it's not just tax or audit. Like the world is wide open. But if I hadn't gone outside of the classroom, I never would have
Oh
seen
yeah.
that.
Yeah, like I mean, again, like the cl classroom context like is brutal. Like I never learned tax planning in school whatsoever. And like that's all I did I mean, that's most of what I did at the firm. Like they just teach you like the compliance stuff, but it's like, hey, like this is actually like a really fun puzzle, like in real life. Like this is actually like super interesting and like, super, super valuable. And they just like don't talk about that stuff enough. And then so after I worked that like industry job that like really wasn't working out for me, I moved into FP&A at a tech company and like that was a great life too. Like that was like a very much a 9 to 5, like good pay, stock options, ridiculous benefits where I was anyways. Like, and that was a good life. And then that's where I understood like when I made the move to industry, I was like, okay, I guess I'm done with accounting, I guess. Like, oh well. But then after having done FP&A, I was like, oh my God, this is what virtual CFO offering looks like. And this is like a super high value service. And I was able to see how high value that can be. So like the company I was at had like raised a bunch of money and it was just like sitting in cash. And I was like, hey, like we could be generating like several $100,000 a year here, like just by putting this into like a well-timed schedule of redeemable and non-redeemable like bonds and GICs and stuff.
Yeah.
And was able to do that. And it was like a 1 week of work thing. And it, generated several hundred thousands of dollars. And I was like, oh my God, in an advisory practice, you could then just go to every single tech company that raised money and be like, hey, by the way, you're probably missing out. Can I take a look at your books? And like, we'll charge you if you charged 1% of that, you could have made $7,000 in a week, right? Like, for example. And so, yeah, no, I think there's just like really, really interesting avenues that like we just don't hear about enough. And you do a great job at like the cloud accounting stuff too. And those tend to be much better work-life balance things too. Like, some of them aren't, but like some places have great things where you have very consistent workflows, like it's very 9 to 5. You have your set of clients that you work on and you just help support them on an ongoing basis. And it's not these like crazy busy season hours and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and you only find that out by guess what? Getting out there and networking.
Yeah.
Um, in future episodes, I would love to share kind of my LinkedIn framework, but Dom is specifically killing it on the podcast side. And I always tell students this, that if you can get out there and build something while you're
Yeah.
still a student, it just sets you apart. So like starting a podcast in my mind is like the perfect place to go and network, because you're adding value to the speaker because you're getting them on a platform and letting them tell the world about what they're doing. And it's like a networking call, but
Yeah.
it you just post it and share it with everyone.
Yeah.
So, you've been running the Big Four Transparency podcast for over a year now.
Yeah.
And like, what have you seen come from that? Like, have you found value? Is it a waste of your time, or like, has your network just kind of like exploded?
Yeah, no, I think like the network explodes in like such a crazy way. And like you say, it's calling it a networking tool. It really is like anytime you meet someone and you think they're cool, okay, like what are you gonna do? Like, oh, I'd love to pick your brain. Well, they probably have 50 people being like, I'd want a coffee chat with you. Like, especially like if they've done something impressive and it's just like, oh, like, and maybe they're super generous and they'll do it. But then actually being like, hey, I have a platform, it's these people, even if it's not huge and I would love to have you on is like the perfect kind of like segue to kind of deepening that relationship and like actually learning from that person. Because the questions you should be asking in a podcast, like, are probably questions you should be asking anyways to like dig deeper into, what have they done? How did they do it? What did it feel like? Was it scary making the jump that they made? Like, how did they prepare for it? And you really like you pull in so much knowledge from them. So um realistically it took about like 40 episodes until it was like at all worthwhile from like a business and or monetary perspective. Like I feel like about 40 episodes deep it was like sponsors were interested. um I started getting invited to other stuff. Now I get to like speak at some conferences and like that has kind of translated into some deals for Big Four transparency. But like early on, even if nobody listened and this like never made a dollar, I'm like, man, I got to dig deep with some really, really cool people.
Yeah.
And this was after I started the podcast, but I heard, someone that I follow very closely who like is like an entrepreneurial inspiration to me, but Sam Parr, he used to hold these conferences called HustleCon. And he talks about this thing where he's like, "Oh, I used to lie to guests like so badly by telling them that they had to come in like 2 hours early for a mic check." And he's like, "I like the mic works, dude. There's no mic check. Like I just wanted to talk with them and hang out with them and whatever." And like on the podcast, like you can chit chat for 15-20 minutes before, ask them the off-air questions that like maybe wouldn't get aired and stuff like that. And then hit record, right? If you're doing a 30-minute episode, book an hour, like do whatever. And you can learn a ton of stuff from these people. And at the same time, like it doesn't feel like just another coffee chat. It's distinct. Like I've been on a lot of podcasts, but like I still get excited when I get asked. It's flattering to the ego, and at the same time, you're like, I might meet some, I might get some like good people kind of reaching out from that.
Yeah.
I might be able to, instead of providing value to a person one-on-one via a coffee chat, well, I can help them and their entire group of friends benefit from
Yeah.
it. So if and this is not me, like this is not where I'm at, but like if you're one of those people who's getting 10 inbound requests a week of like, I want to learn from you, well, you'd probably pick the higher leverage one. if you want to give back to the community, you pick the one that's going to be recorded and is going to help people, right? So podcasting is great. You don't have to do podcasting either if that's like not your format. Like running a newsletter has been really good for me as well. That's been super interesting. And kind of forces you to try to like synthesize ideas. And I think writing is a really good way to like think more clearly about what you've processed. A blog is great, and it just like, and it gives you something to be posting because you're incredible at like LinkedIn and like socials like that for networking. To me, I'm like, I struggle. Like, if I don't have something to talk about, I'm just not going to say anything. But all of these things give me things to talk about on a very consistent basis, which helps kind of build your network, build your audience, build all of those things, right? Some people can just, and again, I see you being able to do that, can just kind of go on there and like, you just like share your excitement for the world and accounting and CAS and all that. And it's like super refreshing to see and people love it. I'm just not a guy who's doing that. Like, I just don't have that like in me. But having these conversations gives me a reason, gives me something to talk about, something to post about, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
See, and I could never write a newsletter and develop idea. Well, I don't want to say never.
Yeah,
I
you
could
could.
probably learn, but
You
you're
could.
much more talented at developing those ideas and articulating them in a newsletter that's incredibly valuable.
But
Um,
again, I'm 40 newsletters in and also have a proprietary data set that makes it pretty like easy to talk about new things, right? Because I'm not just going out there and writing thoughts most of the time. Like that's a muscle. That's really hard to do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think the moral of the story is like get out there and build something that's going to make you stand out because the people you really want to network with, they're building stuff too, and they don't have time to just answer students' questions like, "Hey, let me pick your brain." See, some people out of the kindness of their heart will do it.
Yeah.
But if you want to get to the really busy people, you got to build something and you got to get out there. So, um, we've kind of covered three things. One is getting active in societies and clubs
Yeah.
and networking activities all while you're still in school. Number two is leverage data to get the right salary and know what you're worth. And then I think number three is, go out there and build something so you stand out while you're networking. And,
Yeah.
in an age of AI that searches the whole internet before it gives you a query, like the more podcast episodes you're on, the more LinkedIn posts you've posted, the more blogs and newsletters you've put out there, the more you're going to be noticed. It's kind of
Yeah.
the new age of SEO, right?
Well, and people can know what you're all about, like at a glance, right? Like every once in a while, like there's someone that I want to talk to, or like the last time I had a job interview, I was like, let me pull up every single like episode that like the CEO has been on. And actually, the hiring HR person had been on one recently, and I was like, I know all about her. Like, I know what she likes.
Pro
Like,
tip right here, man.
yeah,
Go stalk the recruiters and the
it's
people at the
so
company so you
helpful.
know everything, man.
Yeah. And for the building stuff, by the way, too, like, there's a lot of people who like put a lot of pressure on things. Like, I think that is like what has helped me most is like, I'll just like throw things out there and I'm like, whatever. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I've had so many swings and misses, like even with Big Four transparency. Like this was a job board at one point, and like that was like starting to pick up traction, and then it like fell apart. I launched a community, and like that completely flopped. Like that failed. Before this, like I was kind of gearing up for a job at Shopify. Like I wanted to go work there because they're based in my city. I had a Shopify store. I sold pocket squares. I probably broke even on that. I sold about $1,000 of pocket squares and paid probably $1,100 to like set the whole thing up and buy the pocket squares. Now I have like 3 boxes of silk pocket squares in my basement now, just left over from that. But guess what? Like later on, like I got like some soft offers from Shopify and people who like knew I had done that and knew like what I did and were like, hey, like we're actually opening up this role I think you'd be really good for. And that was like a complete failure, man. That was like that thing just never got off the ground. But just the fact that I had tried, they were like, we love that. We love that. And like we know that you understand the merchant perspective. of a failed merchant, but like whatever. Um, like just take some swings, like just try stuff. Like it doesn't have to work. Like even your failures are very, very interesting stories.
Yep. And their experience, right?
Yeah.
Like as a student, you're coming out with zero experience. So if you can get any experience, you're already ahead of 90% of your class and your cohort.
Yeah.
So yeah. So Dom, where's the best place that people can find you? Um, I know all the places to find you, but
I'm
why
all
don't you
over.
give a
Like what would I like best would be to meet someone at a conference, man. Like you going to conferences, you're like the only student there and people are like you're a unicorn, you're the most interesting man in the room, which helps that like you're very interesting already, but they're like, "Oh my God, we never meet people like you. This is crazy." Like people were lining up to talk to you at Bridging the Gap because they were like, "Oh my God, there's a student here who's Gen Z. We don't understand you." It was like you were like an alien at the conference, right? And so just by a factor of that, just by going to places, you're like on third base already. So I would love to see people going to those things and see you there. But otherwise, yeah, LinkedIn, Dominic Piscopo, Big Four Transparency. We can put my email address too if people prefer that. Dom at big4transparency.com, four with the number four in it. But like, yeah, just anywhere you can find me is fair game.
Sounds wonderful, man. I look forward to seeing the future Big Four Transparency. We'll drop a link in the bio. And hey, if you're already listening to this episode on CPA Trendlines, check out Dom's podcast, which is now, guess what, on Big Four or on CPA Trendlines. So
Yep.
check it out. His dude, you could go listen to all his episodes all the way back. They're all good. So just
Thank you.
go give it a listen. And looking forward to seeing you guys all next time. So until then, keep learning, keep growing, and keep making an impact. And we'll see y'all in the next episode.
Student-Led Conversations is brought to you by the Center for Accounting Transformation, empowering the next generation of leaders through student-focused programs that build confidence, leadership, and real-world connection. The Center for Accounting Transformation provides business professionals with a network for utilizing innovations that are ready for adoption, the training and resources necessary to apply those innovations, and an opportunity to engage the talent and community needed to further the pursuit of innovative accounting practices that drive responsible and mindful business performance. If you're a student, discover how you can lead, learn, and grow in the profession. If you're a professional, explore ways to give back, mentor, or sponsor student-driven initiatives. To learn more, please visit our website, www.we.improvetheworld.net, and unlock the power of the accounting profession.